We're here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's May 10th here in Seoul. I'm Shin Yoon, and this is News Generation, where we make the news at Arirang's very own open studio. Every morning, we'll discuss the top issues and latest current affairs affecting people in their 20s and 30s. Joining me in the studio is Park Ki-hoon.
Thank you for having me.
Good morning. And Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
All right, and both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. As usual, let's start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. Now, we're seeing severe heat waves become more common in Southeast Asia with the intensifying climate crisis. Vietnam, for instance, saw its highest temperature yet. Temperatures reached 44.2 degrees Celsius in the northern district of Daejeon, and Laos and Thailand also broke national records. Now, many travel agencies in Korea are worried that travelers will refrain from visiting these countries or even cancel their trips. Moving on, South Korea's top mobile messenger app, KakaoTalk, had another service malfunction on Monday. For around 20 minutes, people couldn't log on to the app or send messages to others. Over the past few months, the app has suffered numerous malfunctions. One of its longest service failures was in last October when a fire broke out at their data center. And we're only at the 5th month of this year, but the United States has already seen over 200 mass shootings. Data from the Gun Violence Archive found that over 14,700 people died from gun violence this year. More than 600 victims were younger than 18. Now, we're going to take a closer look at the third news items. These staggering figures were revealed just after yet another mass shooting, which happened at a shopping mall near Dallas, Texas this weekend. 8 people were shot dead. Now, officials later identified the shooter. He was a 33-year-old named Mauricio Garcia. Police shot him at the scene, and the motives behind the killing remain unclear. But one thing is clear here, Walter. The United States has just way too much gun violence these days. But how come they can't stop it?
Well, here we go again. I mean, is this even considered news anymore? This is the thing. You know, it's really sad as a person who's living outside of the United States. I've come desensitized to this sort of news. And what does that say for me? It makes me very sad. I mean, but every week you just hear mass shooting in blah, 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 state of US. I mean,
Right.
You hear it again and again and again, where to the point you're like, well, of course. And it seems like the whole world is now looking at the US and just going, what are you doing? What are you doing? It's absolutely crazy. I mean, I come from Australia. We had a mass shooting in 1996 that changed gun reform forever, and it worked. And the thing is, I'm not even going to tell you too much about the history because every time something happens in the US, Australia is used as an example why gun reform works. So here's a little message to the lawmakers. We've been talking about this on the news all the time. How about we just do a 365-day trial period? We've tried your thing. How about just for 1 year? 1 year we make a little tweak to the Second Amendment. And listen, if you don't get results, which means, less mass shootings or probably a lot less gun shootings in general, families who are happy to, send their children to school, people who don't have to worry about their lives anymore due to gun violence. I mean, if that doesn't work, then yeah, have your Second Amendment back. But I'm sure it will change if you tweak those Second Amendment gun rules.
And that's a really compelling argument there, and we could feel the frustration in the air, especially because you're representing and speaking on behalf of many of those in their 20s and 30s who feel the exact same way as you do. And no other high-income country has suffered such a high death toll from gun violence. Though this is an incident that happened in the States, Korea has also shared its deepest condolences after finding out 3 members of a Korean-American family were shot. The victims were Cindy and Yu Cho, who were killed alongside their 3-year-old son, James, and the couple's 6-year-old son, William, only survived. And I was devastated when I heard this, Kyun. What about you?
Obviously, me too. My deepest condolences go to the Korean American family and everyone else who lost their lives. Gun violence, just like what Walter said, has been an ongoing and recurring incident in the US, and there hasn't been much improvement and nor effective measures taken from each state. And I think, it's time that action must be taken for now, because this is a very serious issue. And this is just a few of my suggestions to mitigate the gun violence. I think, one, there should be a more strengthened background check for gun purchases. Second, increase in education and awareness of gun safety and ownership. And three, addressing root causes of violence such as poverty, racism, and lack of access to mental facilities. And I think it's really sad at the fact that we still live in a very dangerous world. And I just hope that any kind of violence, goes away, disappears, so that we can live in, a safer world moving forward. Yeah.
For sure, and it's really sad because President Biden said flags at federal buildings would be lowered to half staff until sunset on Thursday, but it's already the third time the United States is doing that this year. Now we're going to move on to our discussion topic. On a brighter note, a year ago on this day, South Korea welcomed its 20th President Yoon Suk-yeol, and following his inauguration, President Yoon opened up a place that has long been secluded from the public. To find out, take a look at the screen. On May 10, 2022, South Korea opened the gates to Cheong Wa Dae, the Blue House. Located near Mount Pugaksan, behind the main palace of the Joseon Dynasty, Gyeongbokgung Palace, is Cheong Wa Dae, the former presidential office of South Korea. To break free from the past and commence a new era, President Yoon opened this once secluded compound to the public. It was a historic move, considering how it was closed off under strong security for more than 70 years. Since last May, visitors from around the world have been able to explore this symbolic site. The Cultural Heritage Administration allows up to 49,000 people per day to visit Cheong Wa Dae as long as they make online reservations. Today, NewsGen aims to answer 3 questions. 1. It's been a year since Cheong Wa Dae started accepting visitors. How well has it been doing? 2. What do millennials, Gen Z, think about Cheong Wa Dae? Do they think it could be a popular tour site of Korea? 3. What do young tourists look for when visiting these iconic cultural sites? Today is the 1-year anniversary of Cheong Wa Dae opening to the public. The same day last year, many local news outlets covered how symbolic and significant this was. So here in the studio, Walter, why don't you walk us through why this attracted so much buzz and what's so significant about Cheong Wa Dae?
Okay, so obviously the reason why it's attracted so much buzz is the fact that it's a very, very important part of South Korean history, or Korean history in general. So the site of Cheong Wa Dae actually dates back to the Goryeo dynasty area, which was around 918 to 1392, where the royal palaces once actually stood. Now, from 1392 up until 1910, which was the Joseon era, the site was considered sacred, a place where the retainers would pledge their loyalty to the king. The land was later renamed Gyeongmu-dae, and by the command of the Daewon-gun, the prince of the Great Court, the rebuilding of Gyeongbokgung Palace took place during that 19th century. Now, obviously, if we cut to modern day, we simply know Cheong Wa Dae as the Blue House.
Right.
I don't know if it's copying the White House, but it's definitely, obviously, because there's the blue roof, as the place where Korean presidents, first ladies, and the staff live. Now, starting with Lee Suk-man and 11 other presidents, actually ending as of before our current president, Moon Jae-in, it's now become a popular tourist attraction for those out there.
And as you could see through the screen, it is beautiful for sure.
Absolutely.
And Q, and I'm wondering, have you or any of your friends visited Cheong Wa Dae? And, is it becoming a popular site? What does it have to offer?
Actually, I did have a chance to visit Cheong Wa Dae last year in November. I was quite lucky to receive a free tour of the site because one of my friends actually knew someone who used to work in Cheong Wa Dae.
Oh,
so
really?
Wow.
That person gave us a very meaningful, convenient, and of course, informative tour. And at the end of the tour, we all each received soldier shot glass with the Blue House printed on it, and that was quite interesting. But other than that, the queue was quite much longer than I expected it to be, and there were a lot of people that came in large groups. And they seemed like they came from the countryside because they came from. I saw many tour buses.
Right.
And I thought, oh wow, well, it was interesting to see a lot of visitors in that age range.
Right.
But I didn't see many young people on the site, which was a little unfortunate. But perhaps it was maybe because of the cold weather, or it was early on a Saturday morning. But I hope more youngsters pay a visit, as it's definitely worth the experience. And I found out that during May there are many events happening from
Right.
circuses, magic shows, and even performances. So please, pay a visit if you can. And finally, like one part that really caught my attention was the beautiful scenery of the Cheong Wa Dae, and from green gardens like Nukjiwan to extremely old trees that were like I think there are over 120 species.
Wow.
Sorry. Yeah, species
Yes,
of trees.
species of
and
trees.
numerous hiking courses, as Pugak Mountain is right behind Cheong Wa Dae. So if you're a person who's just generally interested in, enjoys nature and hiking in general, I highly recommend Cheong Wa Dae, as it's just much more than just a residence of former Korean presidents.
For sure, like the beautiful scenery has
Right.
been revealed. A lot of youngsters can go take pictures, but as you mentioned, it seems like that our generation isn't going that much, and that's why officials are trying to attract more of them here. And also, another popular type of tourist they want to attract is international visitors, right? So Walter, why don't you walk us through on how many foreigners have visited the Blue House so far?
Well, it's actually quite good numbers, and as we know, a lot of tourists are coming in now into South Korea, and a lot of those tourists are of our MZ generation because they're interested in K-pop, K-culture, whatever. So it's good to see that they're also looking at Korean history as well, because we know it's just as important to our, well, obviously history, than just what is happening in the present. So the number of tourists is steadily increasing. So as an example, from January, there was actually 100,000 people who entered the gates of Cheong Wa Dae.
Wow.
Now in March, that saw a 50% increase to 150. And just this past month, 180 people in April went into Cheong Wa Dae. So it is on the increase, and I do think this is now becoming a part of people's, tourist plan. Because I also think that it's a very interesting area to go around, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But yes, I can see that we are seeing more and more tourists, international tourists, heading into that direction.
And why don't we now hear from an international tourist who went to Cheong Wa Dae herself to see what it has to offer. And let's hear what could be done to make it more accessible or attractive for more and other young people. So let's find out how appealing of a tour site Cheong Wa Dae is to one global millennial. It's Tamar Apsiauri, a public management student from KDI School. She's currently living in Georgia. Welcome, Tamar.
Hello, I'm Tamar. Thank you for having me.
All right, thank you for joining us. Now, Tamar, I heard that you went to Cheong Wa Dae. When did you go, and why did you decide to take a visit?
I had the chance to visit there last year in July, and it was a part of the trip organized by my university. And our language professor was the one who suggested to go there, as it had opened the doors for the public for the first time. And hearing that, we were all excited to visit such an important landmark of South Korea, because we thought it would be the great chance for us to learn more about Korean culture and their history. And also it was the great opportunity for us to see the center of Korean politics and government.
Okay, wow. How is it like for you? And what was the most memorable thing that you tried or saw there? Like for me, the beautiful scenery was what really caught my attention. But what was it like for you?
We think it kind of, at first, it kind of felt like stepping into the King's Palace for old times, and it has a great style, traditional architect, and fancy atmosphere. But it kind of felt different also because it had the modern facilities, which I admired, because it felt like seeing the old and new come together. So it helped me to understand the history and modernity of the country. And also it gave me a glimpse of how presidents and their families live. And going into the different kind of offices and meeting rooms made me realize how much responsibility comes with being a president of the country. And overall, I was amazed about beauty and scale. And I can not agree with you about the garden. And most impressive one was the garden because it's beautiful nature. And I particularly impressed how well maintained this garden was. And it provided like peaceful retreat from the busy streets of Seoul. And the garden features with the traditional Korean and modern landscape style, and it had like beautiful plants, flowers, ponds, and bridges, which made the excellent photo opportunities. And if you're interested in photography like me or just appreciate the nature, I think it's a garden you should definitely visit.
Oh, it sounds like there's a lot of photo opportunities there as well. So, have you ever like visited other countries, presidential offices, like for instance, maybe the White House or maybe some traditional palaces abroad? And what do you think of Cheong Wa Dae's biggest competitive edges, and how could we better attract more international tourists, do you think?
Unfortunately, I have never visited any presidential residence before, but about the palace, I could say that most memorable for me it was the Palace of Versailles in France.
Oh.
But it's difficult to compare Cheong Wa Dae to the palace because it has a different culture, history,
For
and
sure.
style, and they have unique features. However, I think Cheong Wa Dae's biggest competitive edge is that it has modern facility which are closely tied to Korean culture, and the fact that it was presidential office till 2022. Also, the location is the biggest advantage, I think, because it's easy to access. It's in the heart of Seoul, so for tourists, it will be easy to go there.
For
And
sure.
and talking about the visitors, I would like to answer your question: how to attract international visitors. As K-pop and K-dramas has recently gained like immense popularity worldwide, I thought it would be the beneficial for government partnering with the popular celebrities and promote the Cheong Wa Dae. These celebrities can create some engagement content, for example, just vlogs or variety shows or simple post pictures visiting Cheong Wa Dae, which would be great, which would like generate a significant interest in their fans.
Right.
Also, additionally, the influencers and YouTubers can also be the valuable asset promoting this place. Because personally, I have discovered many interesting places in South Korea because of the YouTubers I follow.
Right.
So since South Korean government already invested in influencers, I think it would be great if they encourage influencers to go there and promote the place. And I also thought an effective way and strategy could be to organize an event for foreign influencers, offering some exclusive access or some special English tours in exchange for
Right.
social media posts.
For sure,
And
Tamara. Like exposing Cheong Wa Dae, the living history of South Korea's not only ancient but modern history, and also exposing it through cultural content, ambassadors or celebrities, as you mentioned, would be a great idea.
yes,
All right. Thank you so much, Tamara. It was a pleasure to hear from you today.
Thanks, Tamara.
Thank you.
thank you for having me again.
All right, now instead of our usual viewer comment section, today we've decided to hear from people who've actually visited the Blue House themselves. So we chose 3 out of the hundreds of reviews left on Cheong Wa Dae's website. Take a look at the screen to find out what they are. Koala said, please open walk-in reservations so that more people can pay a visit. Ashley said, I wish there were more English signs explaining the significance of everything inside. This would help international tourists that come. And this is the longest comment here. Yonghee Lee said, I passed by the Blue House in my car a few times and learned about what's inside on TV. But actually stepping foot inside and seeing everything for the first time in person was a totally different experience. It was much bigger than I thought and is well managed. Now, these are not what our viewers said actually, but some tourists from Cheong Wa Dae actually had to say. But before we end off, why don't we talk about what you guys say is the biggest reason Cheong Wa Dae is worth visiting? And Ki-hoon, you've visited yourself, so could you give us any ideas on how Cheong Wa Dae could be more accessible and approachable for more tourists tourists, especially from our generation?
Yeah, well, for young tourists, I guess visiting Cheong Wa Dae may not sound as interesting, but just like what Tamar said, maybe incorporating like our idols, BTS,
Yes.
our Blackpink, maybe if they held concerts at the site, I think it would definitely attract more young tourists and even myself. So using those celebrities and what makes Korea, like be well known over the world, I think using that implementation might work. And also, it is located in the heart of Seoul where it's surrounded by other interesting sites. So close by, there are national history and art museums along with traditional food markets and of course Hanok villages.
Yes.
Yeah, I definitely like that place. And also, like I mentioned before, many celebrities, influencers, YouTube influencers, and even a famous food cartoonist called named Hoyoungman explained that some of the best tasting Korean restaurants are near Cheong Wa Dae. So I myself go to that area to try one of the best Korean dishes like kalguksu, sujebi, and samgyetang, and the list goes on. So if you plan to visit Seoul to indulge the historical, cultural, local, and of course the contemporary side, I say Cheong Wa Dae is definitely a place to visit.
For sure, and as Tamar and some of the visitors said, having more English explanation and English options could be another idea too, right?
Yeah, I think that's obviously something that they need to fix straight away because that's how we will attract more international tourists to go there. Let me give you a tip if you are planning to go there and you're from another country. I would maybe make a reservation first at Cheong Wa Dae and then plan your trip around that day. So as Kyun mentioned, there is not just, in that area, there's not just Cheong Wa Dae, the Blue House, but it's very close, even walking distance to Gyeongbokgung
Yes.
or the Hanok village that you just mentioned earlier. Some great restaurants. I really do think you could spend a whole day in that area. But since you do have to make a reservation for Cheong Wa Dae, do that first.
And speaking of reservations, why don't you walk us through on how we can do that?
Why not? It's actually quite simple, but to make it simpler, let's take a look at the screen.
All right.
So here are the steps. First of all, visit the website www.opencheongwadae.kr. Then choose the date and time slot you want to visit. After that, click the number of people visiting, enter your personal information to complete the reservation. It's as simple as that. But for foreigners, good news, reservations can be made on site on 2 time slots, 9 a.m. and 1:30 p.m. That's how easy it is, guys. So why not visit Cheong Wa Dae before it becomes too hot in summer?
For sure, it's definitely worth a visit. All right, and we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Park Ki-hoon
Always a pleasure.
and Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
And thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are
News Generation.
We're not stopping. 네가 머문 이 세상에도